James Leininger was born on March 8, 2000, in Lafayette, a quiet and modest town in Louisiana. At first glance, he seemed like the child of an ordinary American family. His father, Bruce Leininger, was a 38-year-old human resources executive with a successful career. His mother, Andrea, was 35 and had once worked as a ballet dancer. After 9 years of marriage, they were finally welcoming their first child, convinced that this small miracle would complete their lives. But nothing unfolded the way they expected. James's first 2 years were completely normal. He was healthy, cheerful, and rarely stopped smiling. Then came May 2002. Just weeks before his second birthday, the family visited the Kavanaugh Flight Museum in Dallas. Andrea noticed James's fascination with World War II fighter planes, but she didn't think much of it. For a toddler, curiosity seemed natural. At the museum, James stood for long periods in front of vintage aircraft, gently touching their wings, almost as if he recognized them. That night, everything changed. At exactly 2:17 a.m., Andrea woke up to a piercing scream coming from her son's room. She rushed in and froze. James was sitting upright in his bed. His eyes were shut tight. His legs kicked violently as he screamed, "The plane is on fire! He can't get out! He can't get out!" His tiny fists punched the air as if he were fighting something no one else could see. Andrea tried to calm him. "It's just a bad dream, sweetheart," she whispered. But James wouldn't stop. Through tears, he cried, "The plane is crashing! The man is burning and dying!" Hearing words like that from a 2-year-old sent chills down Andrea's spine. The nightmares returned night after night, always the same story: a burning plane, a trapped pilot, a fall, then death. Bruce initially believed it was a temporary reaction to the museum visit. "Kids can be affected by what they see," he told Andrea. "It'll pass." But it didn't. In June 2002, James began speaking more clearly, and one of the first words he ever said stunned his parents. Holding his toy airplane, he looked at it and said a single word: "Corsair." He pronounced it clearly, perfectly, without hesitation. Without a moment of hesitation, Andrea stared at him in disbelief. "What did you say, sweetheart?" "Corsair. This is a Corsair. I used to fly a Corsair." When Bruce came home that evening, Andrea was clearly shaken. "How does a 2-year-old know the word Corsair?" she asked. "I didn't even know that kind of plane existed." Bruce began researching immediately. The F-4U Corsair was one of the most famous U.S. Navy fighter planes of World War II, widely used in the Pacific against Japanese forces. But how could a toddler know this? James didn't watch cartoons. He only read basic picture books. There were no military history books, documentaries, or aviation magazines in the house. By August 2002, things grew even stranger. James wasn't just talking about plane crashes at night anymore. He started mentioning them during the day. While playing, he would suddenly freeze, stare out the window, and ask his mother, "What would you do if the Japanese came?" One afternoon during lunch, he dropped his spoon and calmly said, "There's fire in the cockpit. The engine isn't working. I'm going down." Then he continued eating as if nothing had happened. Andrea knew this was no longer coincidence. She began keeping a notebook, carefully writing down every unusual phrase and behavior James displayed. By September, the notebook was nearly full. On the night of September 15, 2002, during another nightmare, James suddenly screamed, "James is here! James is burning!" Andrea shook him gently. "Baby, you're James. You're not burning. "You're here. You're safe." James opened his eyes, looked straight at her, and said calmly, "No, Mom, I'm James Huston. My plane crashed." Andrea felt her heart stop. This was the first full name James had ever spoken, but it meant nothing to them. Who was James Huston? Bruce didn't sleep that night. He spent hours searching online. He typed the name into Google. Nothing. The next morning, he went to the local library and requested World War II military records. He searched for weeks. And then he found him. James M. Huston, Jr. was a 21-year-old U.S. Navy pilot. On March 3, 1945, he took off from the aircraft carrier USS Natoma Bay in a Corsair during a mission in the Pacific. His plane was hit by enemy fire, caught fire, and crashed into the ocean. His body was never recovered. Bruce's hands were shaking. The date, location, and aircraft type on the screen matched James's descriptions perfectly. It was too precise to dismiss. Yet one question kept echoing in his mind. How could this possibly be real? In October 2002, James suddenly asked during breakfast, completely out of the blue, "Where is Jack Larson?" Then he added, "I flew with him. I need to see him." Bruce and Andrea exchanged a long look. They both knew this had gone beyond anything they could handle alone. Professional help was unavoidable. Dr. Jim Tucker was a psychiatrist at the University of Virginia who specialized in childhood reincarnation cases. He was also a student of the renowned Dr. Ian Stevenson, who had been researching similar cases since the 1960s. Andrea contacted Tucker and explained everything. After listening, the doctor said the case was highly unusual and agreed to travel to Louisiana immediately. On November 5, 2002, Dr. Tucker arrived at the Leininger family's home. James was just 2.5 years old. Tucker spent hours with the child, playing games, observing his reactions, and asking questions. James told him the same story he had told his parents: the Corsair plane, the Natoma Bay, the Japanese, the fire, the crash. At one point, Tucker turned to Bruce and asked a very direct question. "Has this child ever been exposed to any source that could explain this knowledge? Television, books, the internet?" "Absolutely not," Bruce replied without hesitation. "There are no military history books in our home. He doesn't even watch cartoons. The only programs we allow are basic educational children's shows." Tucker took notes, then asked another question. "Have you researched Jack Larson?" "Yes," Bruce said, his voice trembling now. "I found him. Jack Larson was a real person. He flew alongside James Huston on the USS Natoma Bay. He's still alive. He's retired and living in Arkansas." The room fell completely silent. Tucker took a deep breath. "One of the strongest aspects of this case," he said, "is the sheer number of verifiable details. A 2-year-old child not only recalling a historical name, but also identifying a fellow pilot, an aircraft carrier, a specific plane model, and the manner of death. That level of specificity is statistically beyond coincidence." Throughout November, Tucker and Bruce continued their investigation together. They requested James Huston's military records from the National Archives. The files that arrived totaled 234 pages. Each page was carefully reviewed, and every single detail aligned with what young James had described. But the most shocking detail had yet to surface. In December 2002, one evening, James turned to his father and spoke calmly. "The plane that hit me was small. It looked like a red ball. It came from right next to the engine. Bruce froze. He began researching immediately. In the Pacific Theater of 1945, Japanese anti-aircraft guns used small-caliber shells with red tracer rounds. This information existed in military reports, but not in documentaries, books, or popular media. How could a child possibly know that? In early 2003, Bruce finally found the courage to write to Jack Larson. The 85-year-old retired pilot broke down in tears when he read the letter. He later called Bruce, and what he shared during that conversation shattered everything Bruce thought he understood. "James Huston was my best friend," Larson said, his voice shaking. "We took off together that day. When his plane was hit, I was right beside him. I saw it catch fire. I watched him struggle desperately to regain control, but he couldn't get out. The plane hit the ocean and sank. I've thought about him every night for 58 years. Bruce swallowed hard and managed to say only one thing. "My son remembers you." There was a long silence on the line. Then Larson spoke again. "If this is real, if James truly came back, please tell him this. I forgive him. I blamed myself every day for not being able to save him." In March 2003, Dr. Tucker published the first academic report on the case. The scientific community split in two. Skeptics argued that the child was unconsciously assembling bits of information he had overheard. Supporters countered that the volume and accuracy of verified details went far beyond coincidence. After turning 3, James added another detail. "There was another friend on the ship. His name was Billy. He crashed too, but before me." Bruce investigated again. He found no pilot named Billy in the USS Natoma Bay records. But in March, during interviews with surviving crew members, the truth emerged. The correct name was Billy Peeler, and Peeler had been killed 3 weeks before Huston. In March 2003, Bruce made a difficult decision. He took his family on a trip to the Pacific coast, but the real destination was the USS Midway Museum in San Diego. A meeting had been arranged with former Natoma Bay crew members who were still alive. That morning, James seemed uneasy. As they entered the museum, he held his mother's hand tightly. "Mom," he whispered, "there are people here I know." Inside, 12 elderly men were waiting. All of them were in their 80s. The moment they saw James, they fell completely silent. The little boy slowly walked toward the group. He stopped in front of one man, looked up, and said clearly, "Hello, Mr. Larson." Jack Larson dropped to his knees. Tears streamed down the old man's face. The only words he could manage were, "Hello, James." The next 2 hours became unforgettable for everyone inside the museum. James described the layout of the ship in detail. He pointed out which decks held what, where the pilots ate, and where they slept. Then he turned to one of the elderly sailors and said, "You worked on deck with the rigging." The man stood frozen. Slowly he nodded. "Yes, I was part of the rigging crew." James looked at another man. "Your nickname was Tex," he said. The man closed his eyes. "How could you possibly know that, son?" he whispered. James answered without hesitation, "Because that's what you used to call me." In June 2003, CBS learned about the story and sent a crew to Lafayette. The family initially refused to give an interview. Eventually, they agreed. Andrea explained her decision simply. Maybe it will give hope to other families. Maybe they'll finally understand what their children are going through. The interview aired on September 15, 2003, and was watched by 18 million people. The next day, the Leininger family's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Thousands of families called, sharing similar experiences. But along with support came threats. Some religious groups claimed the case was demonic. Bruce and Andrea were forced to make a painful choice. To protect their son, they withdrew completely from media attention. But James's memories didn't stop. In October 2003, James casually told his father, "We passed near Iwo Jima." The island had a strange shape. It had a mountain like a volcano. Once again, the detail was accurate. In March 1945, the USS Natoma Bay had been operating near Iwo Jima during the battle, and yes, the island's Mount Suribachi was volcanic. In November 2003, James said he had seen a woman named Ruth in a dream. "She was very sad," he said. "She was waiting for me, but I never came." Bruce researched James Huston's girlfriend but found nothing until December, when he contacted Huston's sister, Anne Huston Barron. The 83-year-old woman told Bruce over the phone, James's fiancée's name was Ruth. Official records list her as Ruth Ann, but everyone called her Ruth. When my brother died, Ruth fell apart. She never married. In 1960, she took her own life. Bruce couldn't bring himself to end the call. His 3-year-old son knew the name of a woman who had been engaged to a man who died 58 years earlier. The thought was almost unbearable. The year 2004 became the most intense period of investigation. Dr. Tucker carefully examined 32 highly specific statements James had made and verified them one by one. The results were astonishing. Aircraft type, Corsair, correct. Ship name, USS Natoma Bay, correct. Pilot's name, James Huston, correct. Wingman, Jack Larson, correct. Pilot lost earlier, Billy Peeler, correct. Time frame, March 1945, correct. Location, Pacific, near Japan, correct. Cause of death, plane caught fire, correct. Weapon type, small caliber red tracer rounds, correct. Fiancée's name, Ruth, correct. And the list went on. In February 2004, Bruce and Andrea made a difficult but meaningful decision. They would visit James Huston's grave. There was only one problem. Huston's body had never been recovered. His family had built a symbolic memorial for him in Arkansas. On April 17, 2004, the family traveled to Springdale City Cemetery in Arkansas. 4-year-old James stood silently in front of the memorial stone for a long moment. Then he reached out, touched it, and said softly, "I'm home now." From that day on, James's nightmares stopped. He no longer spoke of burning planes or Japanese fire. It felt as if a cycle had closed, as if a burden had finally been lifted. But the story still wasn't over. In May 2004, Anne Barron, James Huston's sister, came to meet James Leininger. The 84-year-old woman began to cry the moment she looked into the child's face. "His eyes," she said, "they're exactly like my brother's." James hugged her and whispered, "I missed you, Anne." The woman collapsed to her knees. "I missed you too," she said, "every single day." In June 2004, Dr. Paul Feinberg from UCLA conducted a neurological evaluation of James. The results were clear. His brain was completely healthy. There were no signs of autism, Asperger's, or any developmental disorder. This child is cognitively normal, the doctor concluded. In fact, he's above average in some areas. What he describes is not the result of a neurological condition. In July 2004, a documentary crew requested deeper access to the story. This time, Bruce and Andrea declined without hesitation. "Our son deserves a normal life," Andrea said. "We don't want to be part of the media anymore." In 2005, James started kindergarten. His teachers never asked him about planes or war. No one wanted to reopen the past. Still, James occasionally drew pictures: airplanes in the sky, ships on the ocean, endless blue waters. In September 2005, one of his classmates asked him, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" James answered without hesitation, "A pilot." Then he added quietly, "But this time, I won't crash." In 2006, he began elementary school. He no longer talked about Houston as much. Yet sometimes he would turn to his father and say, "Do you remember when I told you about Iwo Jima?" It felt as if what he had lived through was now part of the past, but not entirely forgotten. It lingered somewhere deep inside. In October 2007, Jack Larson passed away at the age of 89. Before his death, he wrote a letter to Bruce. It read, "Please tell James, if my old friend has forgiven me, then I can finally forgive myself. I was the last one left on that ship. For more than 60 years, I blamed myself for not being able to save him. But now I know he came back, and he brought me peace. Please thank him." When James was 8 years old, the letter was read to him. He listened quietly, then said only this, "Mr. Larson was a good man. I wish I could see him again." In 2009, a psychiatric conference was held where the James Leininger case was openly debated. Dr. Tucker presented all findings. More than 400 specialists attended. When a vote was taken, 61% agreed that the case represented a reincarnation example with no scientific explanation. 39% remained skeptical. In 2010, Bruce and Andrea published a book about their experience, Soul Survivor: The Reincarnation of a World War II Fighter Pilot. The book became a New York Times bestseller and was translated into 23 languages worldwide. By 2011, James was 11 years old. He was a normal kid, playing basketball with friends, enjoying video games, going to school. He rarely spoke about reincarnation anymore, but he still showed a special interest in Corsair aircraft. During an interview for a documentary, he was asked, "Do you really believe you were someone else?" James thought for a moment. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe." Then he added, "But right now, I'm James Leininger. I just remember some things, like remembering a very old dream." In 2015, James started high school. His dream of becoming a pilot was still alive, but there was a change. He no longer wanted to be a fighter pilot. He wanted to fly commercial aircraft instead. Smiling, he would say, "This time, no one is going to crash." In 2018, Science magazine published an extensive academic paper on the James Leininger case. The 47-page study included scientific data, psychological evaluations, and historical verifications. In its conclusion, one sentence stood out. "This case demonstrates the existence of phenomena that challenge classical scientific paradigms. It reopens the question of whether human consciousness truly ends at death." In 2020, during the pandemic, James had a long conversation with his father at home. He was 20 years old by then. "Dad," he asked one evening, "do you see me as someone who believes?" Bruce looked confused. "Believes in what?" he asked. "In reincarnation. Do you believe in it?" Bruce took a deep breath. "I don't know, son," he said, "but I saw what you went through. I reviewed the records. I can't deny it." James nodded. "I don't really know either," he said. "Sometimes I still have dreams, but I'm not afraid anymore. It feels like I lived another life and then moved into this one. Both feel real." In 2022, James earned his pilot's license. On the day of his first solo flight, Bruce stood by the runway, looked up at the sky, and cried. "You're finally free," he whispered. When James turned 23, he said this in an interview. "People always ask me, were you really someone else? My answer is this. Maybe there was a James Huston in the past and he died. But now I'm James Leininger, and those memories belong to me because I lived them. 2 lives, 1 soul." Today, in 2025, James Leininger is 24 years old and training to become a commercial airline pilot. He is close to beginning regular passenger flights. He still looks at photos of Corsair aircraft from time to time. He still sometimes dreams of the ocean. But he doesn't fall anymore. He still keeps the letter Jack Larson wrote in 2007. It contains these words. "If souls truly return, then none of us are ever truly lost, and that thought has given me the greatest peace of my life." James Huston died on March 3, 1945, at the age of 21 in the cold waters of the Pacific Ocean. The wreckage of his plane was never found. His body remains missing. But 55 years later, a child was born in Louisiana. And that child remembered the name of a pilot who had died decades earlier. He knew his friends. He recognized his ship. He even recalled his final moments. Can science explain this? Some say yes. The child may have heard random bits of information and unconsciously connected them. But 32 specific, verified details? Names no one ever told him. Red tracer rounds rarely mentioned outside military reports? Others suggest a different possibility. Perhaps consciousness is not limited to the body. Perhaps death is not an ending, but a transition. The James Leininger case has gone down in history as one of the most thoroughly documented reincarnation cases ever recorded. Dr. Jim Tucker described it this way: "The strongest case I have encountered in my 40-year career." Yet, maybe the most important part of this story is not what it explains, but what it asks. If souls truly can return, if memories can survive death, if the people we love are not lost, only transformed, then what is death? And what is life? Today, James Leininger flies in the sky, high above the clouds, tens of thousands of feet in the air. While sitting in the cockpit, he sometimes looks down, toward the ocean, and he thinks, maybe 80 years ago, another James flew through the same sky. Maybe that James fell. Maybe he crashed into the sea. Maybe he died. But maybe he didn't. Maybe he simply came back, and this time he promised himself he wouldn't fall.